When you think of Sweden, especially in the automotive sense, you think of the safety-minded, practical, slightly quirky Volvo Saab type of vehicles. However, there is another option. Welcome to Koenigsegg. Like every car company, it was named after its founder, Christian von Koenigsegg. And he made his many millions in the chicken industry, literally selling repackaged chickens, making many millions off of that. And by 1994, he felt he had enough millions to make a car company. So, Koenigsegg was founded in 1994, and their prototype, the CC, was immediately put into development. It was a lightweight, mid-engine supercar with a targa top that you could take off and put in where the engine would normally be underneath the hood. That had never been done before in 1994. That was all new. Unfortunately, it wasn't done by 1994. You see, they had a few issues with the engine. First, they wanted to use a flat 12, but Ferrari wouldn't give them one. Porsche didn't make them anymore. So they turned to the only company that had a flat 12. Subaru's Formula 1 team. Wait, what? Subaru had a Formula... Yeah, you heard that right. Subaru had a Formula 1 team as an engine supplier. They competed in the 1990 series with a 600 horsepower flat 12, and it was just about one of the least successful engine manufacturers of all time. They sucked, I think, is the technical term. And not only that, the deal with said Subaru F1 team folded, so they didn't have any engines for Koenigsegg. Which means they were forced to switch to an Audi-sourced 4.2-liter V8. Which was good, but it wasn't great. And it took them until the new millennia in 2002 to finally get a production car on the move. They call it the CC8S. And this was pretty damn revolutionary, okay? It was a semi-monocoque chassis with carbon fiber all over it, and it weighed less than 2,600 pounds. That's pretty lightweight, and considering it makes a 655 horsepower from a Ford-sourced twin supercharged V8. That's right, two supercharged on it. It had a fantastic power-to-weight ratio. In fact, it was so powerful, in 2002, it had the Guinness World Record for the most powerful production car ever made. Can I just make a side note here? We're in an era of 2,000 horsepower electric cars, 1,800 horsepower gasoline cars, and in 2002, less than 20 years ago, 650 horsepower was the most powerful production car. And in fact, the CC8S is the only low-volume supercar in the world to have successfully passed EU pedestrian safety regulations. Why did it bother to pass them? Well, until 2002, every car, regardless of production, had to meet these regulations. And Koenigsegg designed, at great expense, a way to make it meet regulations, and then immediately, as soon as it passed inspection, they didn't need to pass inspection anymore. A law was changed so that low-volume cars are not needed to meet those requirements. So, overachiever, I guess? And 2 years later, following the success of the 6 production cars for the CC8S, the CCR was debuted in 2004, and it was very similar to it, actually. Shared the same monocoque chassis and all that stuff. But it had better aero, better tires, and of course, the power was bumped up to 806 horsepower. Yeah. And that was enough power to reach a certified top speed of 241 miles an hour at the Nardo Ring. setting a Guinness World Record for the fastest production car in the world, which it held for 3 months before the Veyron broke it by 12 miles an hour. But hey, it was a record holder briefly. And then another pattern is emerging here. 2 years after that vehicle, the CCX was launched in 2006, and for the first time, Koenigsegg did not have to source the engine. The engine came directly from Koenigsegg itself, and it was a damn good engine too. It made 806 horsepower from this twin turbocharged V8. And it was their most popular model by far, selling 29 units, doubling the number they had made previous. And you can see why, okay? It held the Top Gear lap record for 2 years when they tested it. And this also was a trendsetter for Koenigsegg because it had several limited editions, like the CCX R, the world's first green hypercar, because it could run the more eco-friendly E85 biofuel. Now you think eco-friendly is going to be worse. Wrong! The car made 806 horsepower, which is very impressive, but on biofuel, it was bumped up to 1,016 horsepower. And it had much better aerodynamics, so it was a proper hypercar. Then there was the CCX Trevita. This was again developed at great expense with a proprietary diamond-weaved carbon fiber system developed at Koenigsegg themselves. And it was carbon fiber coated with frickin' diamonds. Only 2 of them were ever made because the machine, well, didn't really work after a while. And they were sold at a whopping $4.8 million a piece. Yeah. But if you want the rarest of all the CCX models, you couldn't drive it on the road. Because it was the CCGT. Okay? Built as an FIA GT1 competition car, this was a proper racing car designed for the FIA GT1 Championship that competed at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. And, well, because it was a hypercar entering a supercar class, they did have to detune it a little bit. They did get to drop the weight, though, to just 2,400 pounds, but the engine went from 806 horsepower to just 600 horsepower. And just as they got the working prototype finished and all ready to be approved, they changed the rules. Which meant that instead of only making a very few number of vehicles that Koenigsegg could muster, the new rules meant you had to make 350 cars a year, and Koenigsegg wasn't going to do that. So they gave up, having never seen the track with that car. Quite a shame. But what isn't a shame? Their next project, the Agera, launched in 2010, a 4.7-liter twin-turbo V8 in that car, bumped power to a new level for Koenigsegg, 950 horsepower. And just 1 year later, they upgraded that to the Agera R, which made a staggering 1,124 horsepower, which is good enough to break 6 production car speed records. For instance, it did 0 to 300 kilometers an hour, or 180 for you dumb Americans, in just 14.5 seconds. For comparison, that car did 0 to 186 miles an hour faster than a Talbot Sunbeam could do 0 to 60. Yeah. And it's not just about the straight line speed for these Koenigsegg's, no. The Agera R could turn 1.6 G in the corners. That's a lot of G, that's more than the Corvette ZR1 these days. But for the truly insane, you had to get the 1.1. Launched in 2014, only 6 were ever produced. Why is the oddly specific name of 1:1? Because that's the power to weight ratio. 1 horsepower per kilogram. That's a world record, still unbeaten to this day, in fact, as the best power weight ratio in a production car ever made. It makes 1,341 bhp with 1,341 kilograms of weight. That means 0 to 60 in just 2.5 seconds, a top speed of 273 miles an hour. And if you're looking at it going, that's a lot of aerodynamics, you're right. Because the aero at top speed generates almost 2 tons of downforce. That's a lot of downforce. And you would think all of this is ideal for a Nürburgring record. And you're right. It was aiming for a 6-minute 40, which it was on pace to do until it crashed. Whoops. Yeah. By the way, in 2014, that would have absolutely shattered the record from the 918 by about 17 seconds. So, yeah. Slightly disappointing on that record, but it wasn't disappointing. The send-off to the Agera, the RS. This, as I said earlier, was a send-off. It was the last generation that was not specially made custom cars. On a stretch of Nevada highway closed down for Koenigsegg's use, a 1,160 horsepower Agera RS did a two-way average of 277.9 miles an hour, which is, to this day, a Guinness World Record for the fastest production car ever made. The thing looks sick. I've actually seen one. Hopefully, if I can find the picture, I'll show it right here. So, what do you do with the massive success of the Agera? You make a grand touring car, and they call it the Agera. Wow, guys. Real clever. And I do mean that sincerely, because this was Koenigsegg's first hybrid, and it used a revolutionary gearbox called direct drive. I say a gearbox loosely because it has one gear, a forward gear and a reverse gear. That is it. Which means this 1,757 horsepower V8 electric motor hybrid monster can do 255 miles an hour in first gear. Jesus Christ. That's ridiculous. And in a car weighing 3,500 pounds, heavy as Koenigsegg by a mile for it has the world record for 0 to 400 kilometers an hour and back to 0 again in an unbelievable 31.49 seconds, beating their previous record from the Agera RS by 2 seconds flat. For comparison, the Chiron, the mighty Chiron that everyone loves, can do it in 35 seconds. And that's all-wheel drive. Yeah. It's also their most popular model by far, with 80 units scheduled for production. But alas, the Agera is gone and the Agera is still being built, so what do? You make the Jesco. This is currently being produced right now. It was just unveiled this year, in fact, as a replacement for the Agera. In normal gas mode, the twin-turbo V8 makes a mild, at this point, 1,200 horsepower. And on E85 biofuel, that gets bumped up to 1,600 horsepower. 1,600 horsepower from a twin-turbo V8. And it has high and low drag configurations you can opt in for. The high drag configuration develops 2.5 tons of downforce at top speed, and the low drag version is aiming to be the first 300-mile-an-hour production car. Koenigsegg started from nothing in the supercar world, and using sheer raw power, engineering genius, and a few green incentives here and there, they have turned into a force to be reckoned with, and an automotive class leader in performance, technology, and raw, naked speed.